Good Thursday, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on governance and planning tools and tips for community organizations. Thank you for joining us. Caroline, if you could go to the next slide, please. Excellent. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm joining from today, and pay my respects to elders both past and present. Next slide, please, Caroline. Awesome. My name's Jay Bulkin, and I'm the Collaboration Manager at the Social Impact Hub. The Social Impact Hub is a social enterprise and a foundation on a mission to harness the full potential of people, organizations, and capital for the benefit of society and our planet. We do this by providing advisory services, designing and delivering education programs, mobilizing capital for for-purpose organizations, and by leading and contributing to initiatives that build and strengthen the impact ecosystem. Next slide, please, Caroline. Great. So as part of the Helping Regional Communities Prepare for Drought Initiative, HRCPD, we've been working in collaboration with FRRR to build the FRRR Expertise Pool, a vetted network of over 100 seasoned and highly experienced consultants from around the country who have a proven track record of helping community organisations, especially those in regional and rural Australia. The FRRR Expertise Pool is a valuable resource designed to connect community organisations with skilled professionals who can provide tailored support and guidance. The purpose is to save community organisations time so they can get the support and help that they need quicker and more efficiently. It's important to note that the services of the FRRR Expertise Pool consultants is paid and requires organisations to either have internal budget allocation or grant funding. You can learn more about the FRRR Expertise Pool via the URL on the slide, and we'll also be following up with some additional information after today's webinar. One of the consultants in the FRRR Expertise Pool is today's facilitator, the wonderful Caroline Robinson. Caroline is a strategic leader with vast experience in non-for-profit governance and rural community development. She's a proud member of the FRRR Expertise Pool and an AgriFutures National Woman of the Year, Rural Woman of the Year. Caroline brings immense passion and experience and expertise to today's webinar. And with that, I will hand over to you, Caroline, to get us started. The screen is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Really pleased to be here online facilitating this session for you. So thank you very much to FRRR and the Social Impact Hub for inviting me on. I run a small group of people in the wheat belt of Western Australia. My business is called 150 Square. It's called 150 Square because that is the size of the wheat belt, 150,000 square kilometres, about the size of Tasmania. And that is where we have gained all of our knowledge and experience from. And we now work across regional Western Australia. And hopefully this little session today will give you a couple of practical tools to take back to your not-for-profits. And yeah, the not-for-profit space is certainly my passion area, particularly in the regions. And yeah, we live 4 hours east of Perth on a wheat and sheep property. Then we're going to move into some strategy and then how you have a strategic plan that actually gets used in your organisation, and some time at the end for Q&A. And Jay will just be running a couple of little tools for me online, and you are more than welcome to post some questions into the Q&A or the chat box at any time. And if I don't get to answering them today, I will make an effort to answer those the questions, later on, so I can get back to you, okay? So just before we start, I use the words chair, board, director, constitution, and I've just given you on the side there some alternative names, and whatever terminology you use, you just need to make sure that it's consistent with your constitution. So if in your constitution it says chairperson, that's how you refer to that role. If your constitution is actually called the Rules of Association, that's what you refer to. So we've got a little poll that will go up in a moment, and just trying to look at, what stage of planning you're currently in. Do you have a forward plan? Do you have a plan and it needs review, or are you thinking about doing a forward plan? So Jay will just put that up, and we'll just keep that going as I go through this presentation. So the first part that we're going to look at is roles and responsibilities, because it's really important to understand the role that the board plays in developing strategy, and it's really important to understand the role of your constitution in your strategic planning journey. So no matter where you are in Australia, if you are an incorporated association, you will have an act that will set the legislative framework for your organisation. So in Western Australia, we are an incorporated association, and we would come under the WA Associations Act, and that gets changed by Parliament. Your constitution must talk to that piece of legislation. Your constitution generally can only be changed at a special general meeting, and that is where you pass a special resolution, which is 75% of those members invited and then present at the meeting to change your constitution. And then you might have some bylaws or some policies or some codes, and they could be changed at a board or committee meeting. But it's really important to understand that you have that constitution. If you are a board member or an aspiring board member, to know that constitution and to read the very first part of the constitution, which is the objectives. And the objectives define what you can and can't do in your not-for-profit. And those set of objectives need to talk to your purpose. So when you're doing any strategic planning, pull your constitution out, understand your objectives, and understand who your members are. And then when you're in that role as a board member, you need to make sure that you're covering these 4 areas to act in good faith and for proper purpose. So that's things like achieving your objectives, to do it with care, skill and diligence, to not be dishonest, not use your position of influence, and to try and avoid conflict of interest. Today is not the day to talk about those areas, but I just wanted to set the scene for you as a board member, that is your duty there, and that you also have your constitution, which you need to stick to, and you need to achieve your objectives in that constitution. And then you have 7 responsibilities when you're on a board. No matter if you are running the hockey club or you are running a really fantastic big chamber of commerce or an association in health and education, it doesn't matter. These things don't change. The only thing that changes is if you employ any people. So the board's role is to determine the purpose, the mission, the vision and the values, and to lead from the front and see it implemented. And sometimes that is a challenge, but that's part of your role. The other part of your role is to set the forward plan, which is what we're talking about today, to hand some buckets of work out to some particular people. They might be volunteers or they might be staff, depending on what you have, to make sure your not-for-profit is financially and legally accountable. If you have employees, you employ the most senior employee, and the strategic plan is really important for that employee who's at the top of the food chain, because that's where you set any KPIs that you want them to do and where you monitor your performance. Your role on the board is also to make sure you have enough resources, so enough people, enough equipment in the sports club, or enough office space if you are running a larger not-for-profit, that you've got enough money in the bank. The other part of your role is to promote and educate and sing the praises of your organisation out and about to other people so you can get them involved. And one bit that we probably don't do really well in the not-for-profit space is to assess your effectiveness on the board. But I thought this was useful for you to put up the role of a board member, no matter if you are running the netball club or the play group, or you're running quite a large not-for-profit. These 7 roles do not change. It's just the degree that they change in and the amount of time you obviously allocate to them and the complexity of your organisation that dictates it. So the first 2 are the ones that we are talking about in this session today, 1 and 2. So when anyone says to you, what is governance? Because generally people say, well, when you're on a board, you're governing that organisation. And for anyone I talk to in the not-for-profit space, I say to them, it is a roadmap. It is like walking on a highway and you have the 2 lines that guide you on that road and you stay on that road. And you might occasionally come off it and veer off a little bit, but you must get back on that road. So that is governance. And when we're talking about forward planning, put simply, it's a flag on the hill and you are trying to walk together with everybody else in your organisation towards that flag on the hill. And it's the governance, which is the systems and the processes that keep you walking in that direction. So the first part of strategy is absolutely critical. It is about understanding your purpose, okay? So we're going to talk about that and then go into the little strategic planning bit. So if you have that chat function on your Zoom, I would love you to write into the box there, what is the problem that you are passionately trying to solve in your not-for-profit? So this is a great question to start any planning off with, whether you're doing it in your committee or your board, whether you're doing it with your staff, whether you're doing it with a group of people that are key stakeholders for your not-for-profit, some partners, some sponsors, that sort of stuff. This question sets the foundation for everything that you do. And in the not-for-profit space, yes, we're here to make money to reinvest back into our not-for-profit, but ultimately we are passionately putting our time and energy and our lots of volunteer hours into our not-for-profit to solve a particular problem. So this question is the most important before you even start. And one word of advice for you is sometimes when you pose this question, it's not the first thing you think of, it's the second thing you think of. It's a deeper part of thinking, okay? But if you can get people to answer this question and work on it really well, it sets like the baseline for where your strategy then goes. And then you might say to me, well, Caroline, we've got a mission and a vision. And I'd say that is excellent, but you have to take a step back and look at what your purpose is. So purpose is the first building block. The second one is your mission. So who and how and what do you need to be? And your vision is where you want to head on the hill and the world you want to create. Because when we're in not-for-profit land, we're trying to create a better community, or not a better, but an improved community. Care for the environment, It's something that is bigger than us. So when you do your purpose really well and you combine that with your mission, the who and how and what you need to be, you then are walking towards your vision. And that's how those three connect. So if you're sitting in your boardroom or the clubhouse over a cup of coffee, these are the first three things that you would try and answer: the purpose, the mission, the vision. And those questions on the screen there, you can actually ask to your fellow volunteers sitting around the table or the rest of your staff and get them involved in answering those questions, because that just helps you all understand each other better and walk towards that common goal or the flag on the hill. So an example I thought I'd give you is I'm a board member on the Segra Foundation, which is a organisation that goes across Australia. We've been around for a very long time, and this was something that we had to do with our volunteer board a couple of years ago, and we really had to think about where we were going, and we probably hadn't quite nailed our purpose, our mission and our vision. But our purpose, we determined after doing quite a lot of brainstorming, was around enabling change in regional Australia, ensuring regional, remote and rural communities are chosen for their livability and livelihood. And the word chosen for us is really important. When we do our purpose really well, we then create positive change by connecting the thinkers, tinkerers, doers and improvers to make them more effective. And when we do our mission well, what we want to achieve is that everyone loves and, probably more importantly, understands regional Australia. So if you can get the volunteers, and if you've got employees as well, talking in this sort of language, it helps people understand what the organisation is about and where you're heading, and gets them maybe a little bit excited so you can actually fill the positions in your committees or boards. The other really important question to ask of your board members around the table, or a question to ask when you have a new member on your board or your committee, and this is really important if you're operating probably a more complex not-for-profit and you've got staff in particular. But what is the from and the to shift that you would like to make personally as a board member of the organisation that you're serving? And if the rest of the board openly talks about that at a meeting, that can help you understand why people are sitting around the table and why they're giving their valuable time and energy to your cause. And it also helps the people that are setting the direction of the organisation to connect, because often we come onto a not-for-profit board or a sports club or a netball association or an NRM group or a grower group, and we assume why people are sitting there. But if you can ask them, what do you want to see change while you are here on the organisation, on the board, it helps that group connect, it helps that group understand each other better, it helps the team walk towards a common goal. So if we look at the board's role in strategy, at the heart is that purpose question. What is the problem that you are passionately trying to solve? Once you work that out, you can then set your strategic direction. And within all of that, you must operate within your roles and responsibilities, any policies that you might have, and of course, the Constitution, which is where the objectives are. The objectives don't change. The strategic direction changes, in periods of time. But your foundational document with the objectives in it, the Constitution, doesn't. And this is just to help those not-for-profits that are online today. If they do have staff, this is probably just a little simple document hierarchy for you so that you can see that you have a strategic plan at the top. You might have an action plan that comes out of that, which we'll talk about next. Or some of you might have a business plan. What comes out of all of that, though, is you must have an annual budget. You must talk about the people, the workforce, and you must talk about risk management. So when the board sets its strategic plan, and some people wonder why then it just sits, in the back corner or in the cupboard, it's because it hasn't been linked to your budget and it hasn't been linked to the roles and responsibilities in your association. So it's really important to get your plan when you've got it. And when you come to setting your finances for the next year, you might sit down and say, well, what's our membership fee going to be this year? How much money are we going to spend on this event? How much sponsorship do we need? You sit your strategic plan next to your budget and you start to allocate buckets of work into your budget. And then you talk about, well, who's going to do that? And that's your workforce. If they're paid staff, or you might say, well, what volunteers are going to do these buckets of work that are going to help us achieve our strategic direction? So you've done your purpose, you've done your mission, you've done your vision. Now you get into the space of strategy, and we are really big on having very simple strategic plans, like on a page. You could have a lot of other informing documents sitting around your strategic plan that talk to it, that give a really good understanding about, the environment you're working in and the communities that you've got and some of your challenges and opportunities and stuff. But when you get down to actually looking at your strategic plan, the best ones we've seen in the not-for-profit space and that we work to is that plan on a page. And that little plan should say, where are we now? Where do we want to get to, which is that end picture, and the middle chunk, which is how are we going to do that? So if you did a little plan on a page, this is what it would include: the purpose and the vision, and you might pick three pillars or three key themes. You then have an outcome, which is the result that you're trying to achieve, and then the objective, which describes the how. How are you going to do it? And it's really important to keep this plan as simple as possible. You don't have to have everything in it. The strategic plan should set the priorities for your organisation and where you would like to take it. So if you are the hockey club, like I'm president of the Eastern Districts Hockey Association, which is a small association in the Wheatbelt, WA, and we've got clubs underneath us. So at the association level, ours might be even a little bit more simpler than this. It might just be, 3 pillars. So we might have clubs, we might have competition, and we might have players. Then we might have a couple of outcomes linked to each of those themes, and then a couple of objectives to help us achieve where we want to go. So this structure could be for the smallest not-for-profit, and it could be for the biggest not-for-profit. You just need to tailor it to your organisation and how complex or simple you want it to be. So this is an example of just a made-up not-for-profit, but how things link together. So you've got the vision at the top, which is where they want to head to. The purpose, which is just very simple for these guys, just the problem that they're passionately trying to solve, the outcomes that they want to see, and then how they're going to do it. So this is a very, very simple structure, very simple. You can add as more words as you like. You can make it a little bit more targeted or descriptive, or put some timelines in there. But what I'm trying to show you is the simplicity of what it should look like. So you're probably saying, okay, Caroline, excellent. Got this idea of strategy. How are we going to do it? So because we've got a wide variety of people online today that might be 100% volunteer, and good on you, through to a not-for-profit that has staff and is responsible for those staff. The structure of what I'm saying to you here, probably the process is very, very similar. It's just that you might take out some things if you are 100% volunteer, because I know what it's like to try and find people to volunteer in your not-for-profit. But also I don't want to not do it justice for those people that do have staff, and this is, a really important process. So how do you develop it? Well, we go back to the very beginning, and you get your constitution and you look at your objectives, and then you talk about purpose, the problem we're passionately trying to solve, mission, the who, the what and how, and the vision, where we're going. So you have to get the board around the table and confirm that and make sure everybody understands it and agrees to it. Then you might get your whiteboard out and you do your strengths, your weaknesses and your opportunities, or a pestle, which goes a little bit deeper. If you're 100% volunteer, you might then skip the next bit, which is a discussion paper. But sometimes it's really great to do your SWOT and then summarise that, and for people to walk away and to think about it. So you might have a little discussion paper and then come back at your next meeting and look at your SWOT in the quadrants and pick out a couple of priorities in each quadrant. So you'd pick a couple in strengths, a couple in weaknesses, a couple in opportunities, and a couple in threats. And they become your priorities going forward. And that essentially is a very, very simple strategic plan for you. If you're a bit more complex, there would be quite a few other things that you must consider when you're doing that SWOT, particularly around risk management and workforce, and what's happening in the broader environment. But essentially, you just pick a couple in each of those quadrants, and your brain might be having a moment where you have a strength and you have a weakness, and you might use that strength to tackle the weakness. Or you might have a threat that is on the horizon, and you might use your strength to address that threat, or you might go and tackle an opportunity which would reduce that threat. So they actually all talk to each other. Then you can set some strategies, and lots of people talk about the SMART strategies. So that's sort of being really specific and measurable, realistic and having a time frame to it. And then I always talk to boards, there is like this imaginary line that goes across. So up the top, we're talking about strategy, and below that dashed line, that's when we're talking about operations. So if you employ staff, the board operates above the line and the staff operate below that line. And the board really should do the top part and then, you know, have the pillars and the priorities and the strategies, and then give it to the staff to go away to work out how they're going to do it, to set the budget, to talk about the people that are going to do it, and to talk about the risks, and then bring it back up to the board. But it is this imaginary line, and it is very difficult in the regions to operate above the line and also the below the line, because generally we know people in both areas, and sometimes we can sort of get a little bit down in the weeds when we're on a board, and we engage quite a lot with the staff. But I would always try and challenge you that you have to always lift your head, lift it up above that little imaginary line, and the role of the board is to set that strategic direction. You can certainly have staff participating in the strategic planning, but the responsibility lies with the board to set it above that line. If you ever get in trouble, you're more than welcome to talk, you know, find me on the expertise pool, and I'm happy to help you, because this is a very difficult area to navigate sometimes. So in my little slide pack here, I've just given you a couple of an example of how you might do this strategic planning process. So before you do the process, just think about, well, where is our strategic plan going to be? Is it for us internally, just, you know, within our committee, or do we want to shout it out to the world and have it everywhere so that people know what we're doing? And you need to work that out, right? Because it dictates how you might do it. Strategic planning can happen in the clubhouse, or you can go off elsewhere to clear your mind and do it. You could get an external facilitator, or you could use the questions that I just posed at the very beginning around problem, mission, vision, values, the shift you want to make, and that you could do that yourselves within your committee. Really important part of the process is, if you already have a plan, to spend time reviewing it amongst the board members. And probably if you've got a CEO or an EO or a general manager or someone like that, for them also to sit in the room and talk about what has been achieved, what has not been achieved, and why has it not been achieved. And then I've given you a bit of blocks of time here so that you can think about how you might do an actual strategic planning meeting if you're not going to get someone in to help you. And I know most of your budgets would be very, very tight. So I really wanted to share this with you to help, if you're on the board, to run it internally, or if you have the confidence as the executive officer or the general manager to help the board run it. Okay, so you might have your first meeting where your chairperson sort of sets the scene and describes what you're going to be doing and why you're here and how you want people to work together. You might get the whiteboard out and do your little SWOT and your pestle. And you might then have a really good discussion about, well, what are the priorities in each of the quadrants, and group those into themes. And sometimes, like when we've done that, we've then summarised it into a little survey monkey, sent it back out to the board and said, do you agree that these are the top priorities? And if you don't agree, move them around and tell us where you think our priorities need to be. You can then come back at another committee meeting and you can get people to say and to think, well, we talked about this last time, but what did we not talk about? What's becoming clearer? And what does success look like? And if you're the chair of the board and you're doing this internally, that's just a great, that's great 4 questions that will help you start that conversation. And then together you can spend time working out, well, what are our focus areas or what are our buckets of work that we need to do over the next 3 to 5 years, and divide it up and put it into those strategic pillars. Generally, strategic plans, can be that 3 to 5 year time frame. I've seen some not-for-profits have a 10-year strategic plan, and it's a little bit more outcomes focused, and that's absolutely fine. It is whatever you want to do in your not-for-profit that's going to help you get to that flag on the hill. But I think probably a shorter time frame is good, so that 3-year time frame, because it then creates a little bit more relevancy, I think, and you use it a lot more. So after you've done that process with the whiteboard and had a really good, crack at it and spent time writing the plan, you could then come back to your third committee. You could read it, make sure that everyone understands it. It's really important to then talk about, where does this plan need to go? Does it need to be put on our website? Does it need to be stuck up on our club rooms? Does it need to be emailed out to our members? Do we use it when we go and talk to funding partners or sponsors, or when we go and speak to our local shire or the local government? How are we going to use that plan? Where is it going to have most impact? And if you have staff, the most important thing is sharing it with the staff, getting them involved in it and saying, what is your role in helping us achieve this flag on the hill? The last little bit is, excellent, we've got a strategic plan. How do we implement it and report against it? So I've just got a little poll up here, or a question, little multi-choice. And Jay may put it into a little poll, but you could also just read this and answer it yourself. But it's really important to understand what the difference between an outcome and an objective is in the context of planning. So remember, I said to you, an outcome is the result you're trying to achieve, and the objective is that specific goal. So if you can understand the two, this will then help you in the implementation stage. So if you've chosen an answer, just remember that in your head, and I'll tell you that answer C is the correct one. An objective is specific, it's measurable, and an outcome is what you create, it's the result. Okay? So if we're talking about implementation, outcome, the result, objective is that specific goal, and I'm saying to you that you have to talk about the buckets of work that need to be done to get your strategic plan implemented. And if we think about it in simple terms, it's like a GPS for success. So you have your one-page strategic plan sitting next to you, and you look at it and you say, okay, what are the priorities in the next 60 days, 180 days, or 365 days that need to be done? What do we need to do first? Who is going to do it? What do we need? And most importantly, how am I going to realise when it is being done? And this is the role, if you have staff, this dark blue box at the end here, the what, the when, the who and how, the buckets of work, this is for your staff to work out. Okay, and then they come back to you, bring it back up to the board and say, this is what we're planning to do to help this organisation get to the flag on the hill. So break it down, look at the outcome and look at the objective, and within each objective, list the steps that need to be taken to achieve it. Think about who needs to be there, how much money you might need, and that's where your budget comes in, your annual budget. Talk about the points of success How do we know it's achieved? What's the evidence we're looking for? And then monitor it. Don't overcomplicate this at all. Some people get a little bit scared by this next stage and they think, yeah, we've got this great strategic plan and, oh, it's excellent and we're off and running. And the bit, which is the most important bit of how, doesn't get done and it just gets overcomplicated. So up on the screen now, you'll see a very simple table that I've pulled from that previous example I showed you. So the outcome, which is what we want to see, the objective, which is the goal. And then I've looked through that objective, which is advocate to the state government through policy submission. And I've thought, well, in the next 60 days, what do we need to do? What are the 4 things we need to do to get that moving, to get it up off the ground? And I've just listed some actions. And then I've thought, well, if we do that in the next 60 days, what's the next 180 days need? And it helps your brain and the team members plan it out in an organised manner. And then I've said, well, who's ultimately responsible for this? Well, that's going to be our general manager. It's not always the people doing it, but it's the person most responsible for it. And then I've said, traffic light system, this is how you report on it to your board, like a status report. Green, done. Orange, in process. Red, haven't even done it. So really good, don't overthink about, don't complicate it. Traffic light system, the best way to do it. And it helps your boards see visually your little action plan. And this would be rolling. So this always changes. Your outcome and your objective on the left does not change, but the 60-day action and the 180-day action does. Those 2 columns are the moving beasts, and they become that action plan or that status report. The resources, who can support you to implement the plan? And do you know what? Not-for-profits, the most important people at the heart of everything that you do is your members. So who within your membership group can help you put your plan into place and get it achieved, particularly if you're 100% volunteers? So you might have a little subcommittee, you might have, if you're a sports club, you might have an umpiring group, or you might have a little group of people that looks after sponsorship or junior development or whatever, and you're saying, okay, this is our forward direction as our association. I'm going to divvy out these buckets of work to each of those little groups of people, and they're going to help us get it done. And you're going to then come back and report it to us. That's really simple. You also take your strategic plan to any of your stakeholders that you work with. If you've got a lease arrangement with your shire, you go and talk to them about the direction that you're heading, and you put your strategic plan in front of them. If you've got a long-term sponsor or a long-term funding provider, the chair goes and speaks to those people and says, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and this is our little plan, and how can you help us achieve this? And you get it out there. You also need to think about what funding is available out there, and the FRRR and the Social Impact Hub and everything that they provide is just one avenue that you can go to. There are plenty of other resources online to find some funding, like the Grant Guru. Ourcommunity.com is excellent as well for not-for-profits. And within each of your states, you would have volunteering organisations. Like in Western Australia, we have Volunteering WA. They have some great tools and resources available. There's actually quite a lot of not-for-profit support out there. So yeah, go out there and find some stuff and bring it back to your organisation and work out how it can help you achieve your strategic plan. And the last one is, well, how do you launch it? How do you announce it, that it's been done? Do you put it all on your little social media platforms, or Do you have well, you must have a session with your staff, obviously, if you've got employees. But really think about where it's seen and how you tell people about it. Really important. But don't overcomplicate it. That's the one thing that I'll say to you all, is don't overcomplicate this whole process. The last little one that I really want to challenge everybody about is, okay, you've got your strategic plan, which gives you the 3 to 5 years picture and where you're heading. You've got your action plan broken down into some time periods of, let's say, 60 and 180 days, or even annually. You've got that. How do you report that you're actually achieving the things in your strategic plan? So I said one way to do that is a traffic light reporting system. So the colours attached to your objectives or your actions. But I'm going to challenge you in your not-for-profit boardrooms and committee rooms, and you can do this agenda structure if you are the grower group or the farming group, right the way through to a large association, a large not-for-profit with lots and lots of staff. This is applicable across the board. So you have a great strategic plan, you have your action plan or a business plan, and I'm going to challenge you to think about structuring your agenda into buckets of time. So the first thing is items for decision. So that is your strategic plan. That is things that require decisions, that is linked to your strategic plan. So bring the words from your strategic plan into your agenda. The second bucket of time is spent in items for discussion. So things that need to be talked about. It might be linked to your strategic plan or your action plan, but you don't need a decision, but you need the input of everybody around the table, and you need their ideas to help. And the last thing is your items for information. And those are the things that are operational. It might be the correspondence report. It might be the general manager's report or the CEO's report. It might be a report from a subcommittee. But those things go at the back end of your agenda. And the reason I'm saying this is because the role of the board is to set the forward direction, set the strategic direction of the organisation. So talk about it when everybody is fresh and everybody is in the room and feeling excited about volunteering or coming to the meeting. So talk about that stuff first, and then go to the things that where you need input, and then the things that are probably just taken as read or just need noting. Okay, so that is a really different way of probably structuring most of your agendas, but keeps your board in that space of the flag on the hill and how are we getting there. Jay, I will pass over to you if there's any particular questions or anything in the chat function. Yeah, over to you now.
Excellent. Thank you, Caroline. There was one interesting question in the Q&A from Emma Everett. She said, "Hi, Caroline. As a community club member, it is sometimes a challenge to discuss new or changing community needs with the club, which doesn't want to change or broaden its remit. Starting a new non-for-profit is no small exercise with the volunteer overload in the region. Any thoughts, comments, or experience to share about when to aim for change from the inside and when to just start afresh with a new organisation?"
Oh, good question, Emma. So when we sit on boards or committees, whichever term you want, it's actually all about people dynamics, and it's about getting people walking in the same direction. And I would challenge you to think about, are we solving the purpose that we initially set, and are we achieving our objectives? And if you feel like the group has done that, well, then there's a natural conclusion. I would never start a new organisation under a conflict situation. That is never any good in our rural communities. That's why I'll say it is back to managing and leading people together. There are also ways that you can reduce volunteer burnout through your constitution. So some of the best constitutions that I've ever seen are short and sharp and address the schedules of the legislation. Talking in Western Australia, we have a Schedule 1. There are 19 elements in it. That's all you're legislated to have to do. There are ways within your constitution you can reduce that volunteer burnout by saying, some of the constitutions we've seen have said our committee needs to meet at least once every single month. That's actually written into their constitution. And I always challenge people and say, well, do you? Is it still relevant that you meet once a month? Or could you meet every second month, right? There's other ways that you can reduce your committee numbers and reduce the number of people that you need. And there's also bigger conversations of, do we have too many clubs or not-for-profits in this space in our rural community? How do we streamline the governance of what we do without disrupting the integrity of what we're offering and what we need in our community? And some of the rural communities we've worked with, particularly in that sports space, multiple sporting clubs coming under one body has reduced that volunteer burnout. And, people have realised, we don't need that many, and we could probably do it in a more efficient way. So hard question, Emma, but it always, at the end of the day, it always comes down to people, and being on a board is about managing and leading people and working through those dynamics.
Excellent. Caroline, and another question from Rachel says, are you able to share an example of an ideal constitution like the WA one you mentioned?
Yes. So you are more than welcome to contact me outside of this, and I can send you a couple of really good examples. But as I said, in WA, we have a Schedule 1 that has 19 elements, and technically you just need those 19 elements in your constitution. In Western Australia, we have a really great resource and it's called the Model Rules. And the Model Rules are great to be able to sort of get the best practice, but they can sometimes be a bit clunky. So what you want to try and do is simplify those model rules and make them specific to the organisation that you run. It must be specific, and it must consider the context in which you're operating. So for us, if we're in a regional area, we might not have, there's stuff that just is impossible, right? So you have to tailor your constitution to how you want to operate as a group, but make it as simple and as tight as possible as well. But it certainly doesn't need to be cumbersome. It just needs to be, short and sharp, but meeting the legislation and giving your board members the best possible information as to how to help steer the organisation and make decisions. So yes, contact me outside of this. Happy to help you with that conversation.
And Caroline, maybe one quick question before I wrap. Jane Peacock has asked, I have set up a carer support group, and I am the facilitator, and there is only myself and one other person on the board. Any advice?
So immediately I would say, I can't speak for where you might be, but generally your constitution will dictate how many people you need to have on the committee and the process you go through for vacancies on the committee, and also whether you can get a quorum, and if you can't get a quorum. But if you've only got 2 left on there, my next question to you would be, how many members do you have? Because there is a benchmark for the number of members that you can have to become incorporated, right? So I'm assuming you're incorporated. If you're not incorporated and you're not operating in that space and you haven't got a constitution and you're just a you're a group of dedicated people in that caring space, you need to probably ask that question of what is the problem we're passionately solving, and how do we make this group not a fun but a really enjoyable space to be, because generally people these days, when they're volunteering, they want to be part of something that has a personal connection to them, and they generally also want to do not long amounts of volunteering. They want to do short, sharp amounts of volunteering. So how do you help your carers group move into that model, particularly if you're not incorporated? But probably a bit hard to answer, but again, super happy to pitch that question in an email, and then we can go back and forth and I can help you.
Excellent. Thanks, Caroline. If you don't mind going to the next slide. Excellent. That was awesome, Caroline. Thank you so much. Before we close, I just wanted to highlight a helpful resource, an exciting opportunity, and a quick way for those that have joined us on the call to share your feedback. First, as I mentioned up the top, if your organization has budget and is looking to connect with vetted, experienced consultants to help you deliver place-based projects, build your resilience, and achieve your mission, check out the FRRR expertise pool via the link on the slide there or the QR code. We'll also follow up later today with more information via email, including the presentation slides. For those of you who are looking to explore your purpose and embed impact in your career, applications are open for Cohort 9 of the Social Impact Fellowship, which is a 3-month transformational program designed to empower purpose-driven individuals with the capability, knowledge, and network needed to embed or drive greater impact. And lastly, we would love your feedback on today's webinar, so please scan the QR code on the screen or watch out for the survey in your inbox. I'd like to acknowledge FRRR's incredible support of remote, rural and regional communities in Australia, and for their collaboration on the FRRR expertise pool. And a big thank you to all of you who have taken the time to join us today. I hope you found the tools and tips that Caroline has shared valuable, and you feel better equipped to strengthen the governance and planning in your respective organizations. I hope everyone has a lovely rest of their day, and we will be in touch via email. Thanks everyone, and thank you, Caroline.